So prior to Teach for India, I completed my Masters in Physics from the University of Delhi. I did my UG also in physics from here. So our school, Gangotri Public School, is in Selampur. It's an under-resourced private school. So I think a lot of the parents of the students, they are not really daily wage laborers, but they're working in factories, or they're sort of doing day jobs in stores and all. So I would probably classify them somewhere in lower middle class, probably. The vision that I have for my class basically revolves around the ideas of my students being grounded in their reality, my students being tolerant and rational individuals, them sort of having a sense, not only them sort of possessing very high levels of self-awareness, and being interested in the work that they're doing, and if interested, sort of being willing to put in hard work in that work. The significance for me in that vision is simply this. The changes that we want to bring about in the lives of these students cannot happen unless and until there is hard work being put across from every single stakeholder involved, including the child. I think that's something that is absolutely very vital for me. Self-awareness, because at the end of the day, the students should be aware of what they're doing, why they're doing it, and I don't want them to sort of partake in the rat race that maybe they may see around themselves. I want them to be individuals who want to do what they want to do, because it is what drives them. It is this passion that drives them. And I think because I don't think this has been clear for me, maybe, or clear for a lot of my peers. I want this connection for them of their passion and their work to be very clear, and that's why I want them that self-awareness and that sense of that sense of being able to work hard. I think two other things very important for me are basically they have to take rational decisions. The world that they live in is not an easy world, and they need to decide how they will progress in their life and how rational can they be. Yeah. So yeah, they are aware of the vision. They are aware that they need to be, that they are aware of their backgrounds. They are aware of the fact that there's a long way for them to go, and hard work is the only way they'll be able to make that leap from where they are to where they need to be. They are aware of the fact that they cannot be doing something because I am telling them something. They are aware that they have that voice, and they need to constructively use that voice to make decisions, to enable me to make decisions for them in the classroom. So in that sense, yes, I do think that they are aware of their goals, and I think for me a large part of being aware of their goals, being aware of their vision, is also sort of being equipped to ask questions, which is what is very significant for me, and they have been asking those questions to me often enough for me to sort of know that yes, they do understand the vision and they are trying to internalize it. I want by the end of this year is for my students to sort of be aware of what are the different subjects, what are the different ways in which they can approach different subjects, and to sort of be able to find a unified approach in how they are studying, whether it be any content, whether it be mathematics or English or history or geography or science. At the end of the day, I want them to sort of inculcate that scientific approach to studying something, and know that if they put that correct approach, if they are tolerant of everyone else's approach, and if they're willing to learn from everyone else's and their own approach, number one. Number two, if they're willing to work hard on it, they will find success no matter what content, no matter what domain. I think that's the aim that I want them to sort of have at the end of the year. Secondly, in addition to these things, I want them to use the tools of questioning very seriously, and questions on their own and through the and together. I think a first or a half-year intervention in my classroom when I had started, and he was, I would say not at the level of his peers when we started out in the class. However, after having gone through these 1.5 years with him, and although he's very quiet, he's not probably an extrovert, he doesn't probably emote a lot, I see him putting in that effort. I see him trying to make that effort with his friends in his group discussions, while speaking, while working, while practicing. And I think that child truly has sort of, for me, epitomizes of what change is possible. You do not need to talk to sort of express. You do not need to exhibit to sort of show that you are growing as an individual. I mean, his quiet time with himself, his quiet time with his friends, his sort of the composure with which he works, and I think the sort of goals that he quietly conveys to me, I think that's sort of, for me, what success should probably look like for a child. Else that really, struck me is something that in the last couple of months, my students have been doing a lot of drama practice, and when I see them getting into groups for 5 minutes and coming up with a sketch of a skit of the 5-minute or 10-minute skit, and being able to perform that and being able to show the sort of understanding they have of their surroundings and themselves, I think that's been really rich for me, of what they can convey, how creative they can be, and how much they're willing to push themselves in thinking both inside and outside of the box, as we put it. I wouldn't say that I have sort of been able to identify what competencies make a great teacher, but I can obviously state what competencies would probably go a long way in sort of changing someone from an amateur teacher to someone who sort of still understands his students. Is, I think, one of the most important things is having that sense of responsibility for the decision that you've made to be in a classroom, and hold yourself true and hold yourself accountable to that sense of responsibility for your students and for yourself. Number one. Number two, I think it's extremely important, after you identify that sense of responsibility and after you are willing to work with it, you sort of listen to your kids. I think it's absolutely essential that, we do have our own biases, we do have our own insecurities, we do have our own inclinations, but at the end of the day, the classroom, is for the students, and I think it is absolutely essential for a teacher to be every moment listening to the student and being able to try and create lessons which are for the student and not for the teacher. Most time is consumed by planning and thinking about a class. I think I have sort of come to realize that there was a point of time when I would plan and execute, but I realized that I was lacking in my planning. When I started improving and giving more thought, I would say, and more feedback, and started integrating more feedback of students into my planning, that's when I started realizing that this is what I need to give more time to. And that's when I started seeing that change in myself, where in the classroom, whatever, the effort that I had to put was minimal, because most of the things I had already run through in my head before I had even stepped into the classroom. Although I probably don't have expected student responses, I know where my students need to be at the end of a lesson or at the end of a part of a lesson, and I think that rigorous planning, that step-by-step planning sort of really helped me, and I think needs and takes most of my time in a day. Is the main difference that I feel. In fact, I have interacted with a lot of teachers, and I've been working with the teachers in the second year, and I've found that what really matters, and what now I see them also sort of veering towards, is that sense of being able to talk to someone and discuss your classroom, and getting support, and getting not only just technical support but sort of emotional support to work on your classroom every single day, to sort of have that strength to work on your classroom every single day. The way I would I think how the fellowship has sort of influenced me in looking at this problem is that when I came in, I didn't know what education inequity really meant. All that I had was my own experience to bank upon. After having come in and looked at mass of kids across schools and across classrooms, I have an understanding of what those numbers that you are shown before the fellowship begins really mean on the ground. And I think how the fellowship has been an awakening experience is that it sort of tells you, when it puts those faces to those numbers, it sort of tells you how scary the picture of education is in our country. If I were an extracurricular event which was a Teach for India wide event in the school, we did it in the school and not outside of the community, so that we could get everyone to come and be part of the movement and sort of see a face to the organization that they call Teach for India, and the students also see what Teach for India really means, number one. Number two, I have gotten my kids to, I mean, while doing DFCs or while doing standalone projects, to go out into the neighborhood, conduct surveys, talk to people, do awareness drives around education, and sort of really address the problems that the neighborhood actually faces, such as students not being enrolled in schools, such as there being problems that students are passionate about alcoholism, about smoking, that students wanted to talk about, that students wanted to create awareness.